Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and I don't typically make these types of videos because I'm a mood reader. But I wanted to challenge myself because I also am a person who loves a good checklist, and I get so much serotonin from ticking things off my to-do list. So today I'm doing the 25 in 2025, 25 books that I really want to get to this year. Now, to keep this video interesting and different and not just talk about the same books over and over again, I'm actually not including any of my anticipated releases for 2025. So all of these are backlist titles that I want to get to this year. So I made it extra hard on myself. But these are the 25 books I really want to get to this year. First, I'm going to talk about the books that I mentioned in my end of year TBR, my fall TBR from last year. I read almost all of the books from that chunk, but there were 4 books left over, and so they are now on the 2025 TBR. The first 2 books are The Fractured Dark and The Bound World by Megan E. O'Keefe. I really want to keep going with this adult sci-fi series. Great action adventure, great world building, great plot, and a great romance that I was kicking my feet for. So I really want to continue this series. I'm still on hold at my library for the second book, The Fractured Dark, but I really want to finish this series this year and get to these books. Then we have Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This has just been a really long wait on the library hold list as well, but this is a cozy murder mystery following Vera Wong, who is an elderly woman who runs a tea shop and finds a dead body in her tea shop one day and decides to be nosy and try to solve the murder herself. The last book that I mentioned in my previous video was The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. Not only will this then complete that TBR that I made, it will also finish my Our Fantasy Bingo challenge that I have. So if you don't know about the Our Fantasy Bingo challenge, I have another video for you because my time is almost up to finish that challenge. I think I have until the end of March. And it's now the second week of February, so I really need this book to come through from the library. I'm still on hold as well. The next chunk of books I want to talk about is continuing series. So I already talked about The Fractured Worlds, or The Fractured Dark and The Bound Worlds by Megan E. O'Keefe, but I also want to continue the First Law trilogy by reading Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. I really like the first book, The Blade Itself, and I'd like to at least get to the second book. The wait times for these at the library is also insane. This is a grim dark adult fantasy following really gray characters that I really enjoyed and would love to continue. I also want to continue the Captive Prince series. This is a dark fantasy romance series, and I really enjoyed the first book, and I would just like to read the second one in the series. And also A Man and His Cat, which is complete opposite ends of the spectrum, a cozy literary manga, which is mostly found family and cat vibes. And every time I pick up the series, it just makes me smile, and I think I'm gonna need that after consuming some dark stuff in these others books. Next, I'm going to talk about the rest of my library holds, the things that I'm waiting for from the library. The first is Never Whistle at Night, which is a collection of Indigenous horror stories. So this is a bunch of authors, and I can't wait to read it because I do like a good short story collection here and there. Then we have The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. This is a horror, almost a novella. It's slightly less than 300 pages. This is about this town that is encased in this bubble and kind of an expedition to go into the bubble to figure out what's going on. This is very highly recommended from a couple of booktubers that I follow, so I thought, why not? I'm trying to read more horror, and this one seems like a good one. Next, we've got I'm Afraid You've Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle. This is the author of The Last Unicorn, and this one just sounds fun, and it looks fun, so I'm just not even really concerning myself what this one is. I like dragons, and this one seems like a fun romp. The Happily Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. This is the last Abby Jimenez that I want to read before her new book comes out in 2025. I've heard that the first book in this series is not great. So there, and it just has some content in it that I don't want to partake in. And so the Happily Ever playlist is the last one I want to consume by Abby Jimenez. I love Abby Jimenez so much. And I just can't wait to get my hands on this one. Apparently this was the first book she ever wrote, but the second she got published, which is kind of a fun fact. I keep talking about my secret video. It is coming, but the very last book I have to read for that video is Friday's Child by Georgette Heyer. Maybe that'll give you a clue as to what my secret video. But once I read this book, I can actually film my secret video instead of talking about it. The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is a literary sci-fi translated fiction about it's like an interesting phenomenon where the government like chooses things for people to forget, and then everyone forgets it, and then they remove all trace of that thing in real life and like fiction, and so people can't remember these things. So like birds, they've gotten rid of birds and every single mention of birds, and so stuff like that. So I've always been kind of interested in this one, but then I saw some people reading it recently and highly rating it, and so I'm still trying to figure out what I enjoy in sci-fi, and so I'm trying to read a bunch of sci-fi subgenres. I haven't read a lot of translated fiction, and so I should be better about that. Another sci-fi on the completely opposite end of the spectrum is Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a sci-fi kind of adventure. It's about this robot who accidentally kills his master, and then it turns into like a comedy of errors. So because of his protocol, he has to phone in the murder, and so he calls the authorities, and they ask him, "Is your master hurt?" And the robot says, "Well, no, because technically he's not hurt, he's dead." And then the government or the police on the line are like, "Well, we'll get back to you in a couple days if your master's not hurt," and then they like hang up on him. And so it's kind of like a series of silly adventures with this robot, and he's like carting around his master's body, to like keeping in alignment with his programming, because like every Tuesday he takes his master to the park, and so he like, I don't know, it just sounds ridiculous and funny, and I can't wait to read this one. One I own physically, but I probably get the audiobook, let's be real, is Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan. This is about a woman who wakes up in her favorite fantasy series, and she is actually the villain in the series, and so she's, you know, coping with that. And I've heard mixed things about this, but I just kind of want a silly, goofy time, and that this might deliver that. I don't know. The last book that I have on hold from the library is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This is, if you know who Chuck Tingle is, you know. But Chuck Tingle has recently started getting traditionally published in the horror sphere. So this is his second horror novel, and Camp Damascus is his first, and that's also on my, like, I'm interested in that one, but I've heard it's really gruesome. So I'm going to try Bury Your Gaze first. The next section I'm going to talk about is my nonfiction priorities. I'm trying to get into more nonfiction, and here are a couple that I'm interested in. The Ice Pick Surgeon by Sam Keane. Something about me is I'm really fascinated by medical history. It's horrifying, but interesting at the same time. And so this kind of fits that very niche interest of mine. Then we have Empire of Pain by Patrick Radden Keefe. This is about the opioid situation in the United States. And as a chronic pain sufferer myself, I'm interested to see what this nonfiction has to say, as well as learn about drugs, medical things. And this one is highly acclaimed, so maybe I'll enjoy it. Kind of another niche interest of mine is Agatha Christie's Poirot, but specifically the David Suchet adaptations, the BBC series. So it's a series of like cozy murder mysteries, essentially. I don't really love the books, but the TV series and the series of movies that David Suchet did are very near and dear to my heart, and there's a lot of nostalgia there for me. And so I'm actually going to read David Suchet's memoir, Poirot and Me. This is about his time playing this character for 3 decades or so, decades and decades. And this is a character that's very near and dear to me, and yeah, I'm just kind of interested in what he has to say about his time playing this character. So no one else probably cares about this one, but this is another one of those like niche interests of mine. The last nonfiction I have to talk about is something that I've had on my to-read shelf for years, and I just haven't read it, and I need to finish it, and then I can finally say that I've done it. Capitalism and Disability. This is, I think I bought this 4 years ago, and I read the first essay in here, and it kind of busted my brain. So I just like, I need a break because this requires a lot of brain power. But look how short the collection is. It's so short. I feel like I can do it. I can do hard things. I'm a smart woman. I can figure it out. So I'm finally going to prioritize this nonfiction and close her out and put it on my red shelf. The last category of books is just miscellaneous, random things that I'm interested in, that I've heard good things about, and just kind of want to check out myself. First is Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. I did my best. This is a contemporary sci-fi kind of like Hunger Games story where prisoners in the United States have to fight in like gladiatorial fights to earn their freedom, and it's like televised, and so lots of good theming here. Obviously prison industrial complex, specifically like targeting Black and brown folks, those types of things. And I've just heard nothing but awesome things about this one, and I think I'm finally ready to read this one. I'm also interested in the author Ted Chiang, and so I want to read something by this author. He has a novel called Exhalation and a short story collection called Stories of Your Life and Others. And I believe Ted Chiang wrote the short story that The Arrivals, the movie, is based on. So I'm just kind of interested to see what his writing is like. So I either want to read the short story collection or the novel. Another author I want to read a little bit more from is Jane Austen. I want to get to either Sense and Sensibility or Northanger Abbey. Northanger Abbey is kind of like a satire of the Gothic genre, and so I love Gothic fiction, and so I'm interested to see Jane Austen's like satirical take on it. And then Sense and Sensibility is just another one of her like more stereotypical romances, but I'm interested in that one as well. So one of these two. Another book that has kind of been on my shelves for a year or two is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. Honestly, I read the first chapter of this book a bit ago, and it was fine, but it didn't like pull me in or push me away. It was just fine. So I kind of want to dedicate some time to getting into this one and kind of seeing what it's about even more, just to give it more of a chance than one chapter. But this is a fantasy series. It's a trilogy, kind of following like with like a Chinese influence. I know Andrew Stewart is Chinese American. So yeah, I want to give this one a shot, see if it's for me. I've heard mixed things about the series as a whole, but doesn't mean I'm not going to enjoy it. I also know this has to do with like bone magic, hence the bone shard daughter. And last but not least, kind of another wild card, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. The reason I want to read this is because James Baldwin is an icon in the classics realm. This is queer fiction from like the 60s, and I actually read like a little bit of this at a coffee shop with some cats, which was lovely. But I was really pulled in by the writing. The writing of this was fabulous, and so I definitely want to get to this year at some point, just to, you know, read more diverse classics as well. You know, I'm trying to read, you know, Jane Austen and some other classics this year, and so trying to branch out and read other classics. Even though literary fiction isn't typically my jam, but we're trying new things in 2025. I really hope I counted correctly and that's actually 25 books. But if you're interested in even more books that I want to read this year, check out my anticipated releases video and follow along this year as I try to tick some of these books off of my list. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another video of mine very soon.